We are live in Studio B with your day-to-day BYU Sports play-by-play. I'm Spencer Linton, teamed up with Jarom Jordan. Joining us now, as he does every Monday during college football season, is ESPN college football insider and analyst, BYU national champion Trevor Matich, on for another Matich Monday. 66-49, Trevor. I hope you had caffeine and were ready to stay up late to watch a long, wild, crazy game. How would you describe what happened at LaVell Edwards Stadium on Saturday night?
Well, who needs caffeine when you can replay that game? I mean, for goodness sake, if I'm driving late at night now, I'm not gonna try to do anything other than play back the audio of that game. It was just incredible. It was just fantastic, and what a treat for the fans that were there. I mean, a Power 5 team with the best passing offense in the country. It was a track meet in the first half, and then the second half was a different game. BYU continued the track meet, but the BYU defense locked down. Everything about that game was so exciting to watch, and at the end, it was so fulfilling.
It was so crazy. It was just crazy. BYU needed 50 points to win this game because there's a 35-point quarter from Virginia. It felt like, oh, man, obviously, in the middle of the second quarter, it's like, okay, it's shootout. I'm impressed that BYU did what it didn't do at Baylor, which was keep up, right, and then exceed and win. Let's talk about, obviously, the highlight of Tyler Allgeier. I mean, homie goes for 266 and 5, averaging 9 a carry. This was an incredible game from him. He had a chance at the all-time record. It's only 21 yards away from passing Jamal Williams there, but he ties the touchdown record. Tyler Allgeier was the key to kind of finishing this thing off.
Yeah, he was really the best defense, as good as the best as well as the defense played in the second half. Tyler Allgeier taking over almost 200 yards of the ground in the second half from that guy. I mean, that kept the Virginia offense off the field, and Virginia knew that that's what they were going to do. Bronco Mendenhall and his staff is one of the best defensive staffs in college football. If they want to take something away from you, they can usually take that away and make you beat them another way. But they could not take Tyler Allgeier away. And looking at it nationally, this really has become the year of the running back. There are great running backs all over the country. We just saw Michigan State, Kenneth Walker III, light up Michigan in a top 10 matchup, and he's now maybe the Heisman front runner, certainly one of the top Heisman candidates that will be in the conversation this week. You've got at Ohio State, Travion Henderson. You've got a couple of guys at Georgia. You've got good running backs at Alabama. Really, the leading running back in the nation is at Syracuse, Sean Tucker, right? You've got great running backs, Texas, Bijan Robinson, all over the country. And Tyler Allgeier deserves to be in that top tier. He deserves to be seen as every bit as good as every one of those guys that will be talked about as Heisman candidates.
Wow, Trevor Matich with us on BYU Sports Nation. Allgeier with the 16 rushing touchdowns. That's number one in the country. He's top 5 in the country in rush yards at 1,127. Trevor, is there anything that Tyler can do over the final 3 games against Idaho State, Georgia Southern, and USC to really get into that serious conversation about being a Doak Walker Award finalist? If so, what is it?
What he needs to do is just be as dominant as he was against Virginia and just carry people, just run through people, and then outrun people once he breaks into the open field, which he's done most of the season. And those are the kinds of things that he'll need to do now because that game was on national television. It was primetime out west. And it was, here on the East Coast, it was a 10-15 kickoff. But at the same time, people will see those highlights because the highlights were so spectacular, even if they went to bed before they got to see much of that game. And they'll be looking at Tyler and be wondering, gee, is this a guy I need to vote for? Whether they're a Heisman voter, a Doak Walker voter, an All-America voter. And what he needs to do in the next 2 games against really lesser competition, no disrespect, but they're not Power 5 competition. He needs to just be a beast. What?
Wait, don't sleep on Idaho State. What?
You can't sleep on Idaho State. Yeah, but I'm afraid some people will, and that would be a dangerous thing because when you sleep on Idaho State, you usually get scorched. So BYU will have to be careful about this game. And I'm actually not being terribly, slightly facetious, but against this competition, right? Georgia Southern and Idaho State, he needs to look like one of the best backs in the country. Not play down to the competition. USC is not the USC of several years ago, but at the same time, USC can step up. And USC is in a position to be the kind of opponent that Allgeier could make a closing statement on in the regular season. Those are the things that he needs to do. Be as dominant as you would expect a great running back to be against the competition that you happen to have left on your schedule.
Okay, we talked about Tyler Allgeier. Jaren Hall, I don't think is being discussed enough about how good he was in this game. 22 of 37, 349 yards, 3 touchdowns, some excellent throws, no giveaways, a 165 passer rating. I mean, Washington State was a Tyler Allgeier game, but besides that, 3 of the last 4, he's thrown for 300 plus. 2 in losses. You could argue some garbage yards, but these were not. He had to keep up. He hadn't had a game like this, Trevor. What did that mean for his development as a quarterback?
Jaren Hall isn't just a capable replacement for Zach Wilson. He's proven himself to be a star in his own right. He's always been mobile. He's been able to run, and he's had that plan B ever since he started playing quarterback, that if things broke down, he could just take off. But we've seen him grow as a quarterback, as a passer over the last couple of years. And let's compare him to Wilson, because a lot of people will. Last year, Zach Wilson, in terms of QBR, quarterback rating, finished 4th in the nation at 88. Now, QBR ranks everything that you do at quarterback, which is to say you're passing, you're running, and when you do things, not just what you do. If you make a big play on 3rd down, that's more important than making a big play on 1st down in QBR. So it's a more accurate depiction of what you've done. Last year, Zach Wilson, about 88, 4th in the nation out of 100. This year, so far, having played far more Power 5 teams, actually 6 more so far, because Wilson didn't play any Power 5 teams last year, Jaren Hall is about 79, and he's 10th in the nation. So 100 is perfect. You've got Wilson at 88. You've got Hall at 79, even though Hall played a much more difficult schedule. So when you make that comparison that way, you have to start looking at Jaren Hall, not just the guy who's done a good job filling in for one of the greatest BYU quarterbacks of all time, but rather a guy who has come in and taken over the job and shown that he is worthy, not just as the next quarterback, but worthy as a star.
It's another Matich Monday on BYU Sports Nation. Clearly, Tyler Allgeier, Jaren Hall, the Nakua brothers did their thing on offense. 66 points, the most that BYU has ever scored against any Power 5 opponent in program history. But I want to go back to something that you brought up just a few moments ago, and that is the BYU defense locking it down in the second half after giving up 42 at home in the first half. Trevor, from your perspective, what did you see and what changed to benefit BYU in the second half, holding Virginia to only 7 points?
There were 2 things. One is that they played better. They tackled better. They took better angles in the second half. But the other, I think you've really got to give Elisa Tuiaki, the defensive coordinator, and his staff a lot of credit for the adjustments that they made at halftime. It looked like in the first half, what they tried to do was heat up Brennan Armstrong, the Virginia quarterback, make him throw before he was really ready to, and then play a lot of press man, a lot of tight coverage to give him or to take away the easier throws. Well, Armstrong is one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. He came into the game leading the nation in passing, and he was averaging over 400 yards per game. Well, in the second half, his performance was so limited by BYU that instead of 400, he was about, 340 or so. And so BYU did a good job over the course of the 4 quarters in limiting him, but it was a tale of 2 halves. Because in the second half, the adjustment that they made was to understand that they weren't getting to Armstrong enough to affect him, and they were getting burned in the secondary. So they started to rush 3 and drop 8 a lot. What that did was put a lot of guys in the secondary to rally to the ball. Armstrong still made his throws. He still had his completions, but now instead of being long touchdowns, and they had 4 touchdowns of 30 yards or more in the second quarter, I believe, and certainly in the first half. I mean, they were gouging BYU's defense. Now, all of a sudden, when those balls were completed, there were a lot of defenders to rally and make the tackle. And that was the adjustment. Instead of heating up the quarterback, being a little bit at risk in the back end, they said, quarterback's going to throw, we're going to rally at the back end. And I think the defensive staff, especially Coach Tuiaki, deserves a lot of credit for reading the way the game was flowing and making the exact right adjustment.
Listen, 42 points on 6 straight touchdown drives is tough, but 7 points allowed in the second half. Now, that's incredible. The BYU offense did its job, too, having to score 50-plus in this one, and they did. And then BYU jumps 8 spots in the AP poll up to 17 now. It's kind of interesting. BYU 7-2. You'd think BYU wins the next two. Obviously, Idaho State and Georgia Southern to get to 9-2. Drake London's out for the season now for USC, their best player, the best player BYU would play, in my opinion, all year. USC game feels winnable. Is 10-2 regular season out of the question right now? Do you feel like that will happen?
No, it should happen. I mean, the only team for the rest of the schedule that can really beat BYU is BYU. USC is dangerous because, they lost their coach. And they've been up and down since then. Washington State lost their coach. And the next week, BYU was in a real fight against those Cougars from Pullman because Washington State really rallied together in the locker room and they took ownership of the situation. And they were a much tougher opponent, I think, than a lot of BYU fans had expected. With this being the last game of the regular season, who knows how USC will come together as a team in that locker room? Who knows what kind of performance they'll have? So it could be that it's a very winnable game for BYU. It could be that it's a serious fight as well. So we don't know about USC. But really, 10-2 is, against this schedule, if somebody would have told you in August that BYU was going to finish 10-2, if they do, would you have taken that?
We would have.
1,000,000%, yep.
Man, that's fantastic. So they still have a lot of football left to play before that happens. But if they do get to 10-2, I think the one big regret is going to be Boise State. No disrespect to Boise, but BYU lost that game because they made uncharacteristic mistakes. They made 3 fumbles that either set up Boise for short touchdowns or took away what would have probably been points, a touchdown or a field goal, when they fumbled the ball on the 19-yard line going in. Those 3 plays are the ones I think you look back on and say, whoa, if we'd have held on to those footballs. Because 10-2 is fantastic. 11-1 is New Year's 6. Either way, there's still a possibility for New Year's 6.
Yeah, let's discuss that more. Because of the chaos within college football in general, and it's becoming the norm from week to week to see anywhere between 6 and 9 teams in the top 25 lose, which is a record pace. 61 teams thus far in the top 25 have lost to this point in the season. Trevor, what's the peak for BYU even with those 2 losses? Where do you see the Cougars ending up if they do get to 10-2 in the AP poll and, more importantly, in the college football playoff rankings?
It all depends on the help that they get, because at this point they do need to get help. I don't think the committee will afford them too much juice for winning out at this point. Again, USC is a really tricky game, but the committee will look at USC as a team that's kind of broken right now, even though I don't. I see them as a team that's backed into a corner. And so, but the point is that what happens in front of BYU now will matter. But a lot of those teams are playing against each other, right? I mean, Baylor beat BYU, so there's head-to-head there. But at the same time, they still have to play Oklahoma. Oklahoma State still has to play Oklahoma. So Cougar fans need to be big Oklahoma fans right now. And other teams. Auburn still has to play Alabama. So we'll see how that one goes. They just had a big win over Ole Miss. But at the same time, if Alabama stomps them in the Iron Bowl, maybe there's a chance BYU could slip ahead of them. So really looking at the rest of the country is going to be key for BYU. And right now it's 17. That's in the AP poll. We don't know what the committee will do. Their rankings come out tomorrow, and the AP poll does not matter in who makes it into the New Year's 6. Only the college football playoff poll, the committee's poll, ranking matters. So we'll see what happens tomorrow.
We're gearing up for a very exciting finish to this BYU football season. Trevor Matich, it's always a pleasure to talk to you during the college football season. We appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Trevor Matich, longtime college football analyst.